Overdrive, hour number 2. Jim, Tatti, and Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star with you. I mailed it in Friday. If you weren't with us earlier, Askarov, the goaltender for Nashville, traded to San Jose. So it's Askarov, a 2025 third-round pick, and Nolan Burke from the Preds for a 2025 first-round pick, which could be Vegas's pick that San Jose had owned. David Edstrom, who Craig J. Button spoke very highly of, and Magnus Krona, a goaltending prospect that San Jose had, and he goes over to Nashville. So basically a three-asset deal.
Yeah, and it's, look, Askarov wanted to be traded. Barry Trotz complied by trading him to the worst team in the league. So on the upside,
yeah,
Askarov's going to get some playing time, you would assume, which he wasn't necessarily going to get.
He's going to get a look.
Nashville. On the downside, he's going to maybe be getting a lot more shots than he might otherwise like.
Yeah.
Not exactly a place to showcase yourself when you're on a team that's getting filled in on a nightly basis.
But it's the National Hockey League at San Jose, and it's not the American Hockey League in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. But as Marty Biron pointed out, like the idea that a 22-year-old guy who is widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, goaltending prospects in the league, why didn't this guy go to camp and say, I'm going to beat out Scott Wedgwood for the backup spot, and I will be in the National Hockey League in Nashville?
I think you could go to camp thinking that, but unless Wedgwood blows up, it's not going to happen.
Well, what if? But to Marty's point, and I agree with it. What if you just make it undeniable? Like if you play the kind of hockey, you stop the kinds of pucks that make management say, you know what, we just got to put this guy. We got to put this guy in the backup spot because that's just he cannot be denied. That's it's one way to approach it. It's probably the way you'd prefer a young man approach it because let's face it, it's not just any team. Nashville has a great reputation about knowing how to develop goaltenders.
They do. I just I understand the restlessness of a McGroarty or an Askarov, however you want to say that.
Nick Robertson.
Well, I do. I understand that just because time's ticking. These are important years. You could understand the team's standpoint of, you're slotted in here. But if you believe in your heart that you're not slotted in here and you're capable of this, I think you should pursue it.
Well, look, you should, but I also think it's dangerous to start. It's like the transfer portal in U.S. college sports.
It is dangerous.
A kid has has a bad day at the field, gets mad at the coach and says, "Oh, that's it. I'm entering the portal. I'm transferring." Transferring is an epidemic in NCAA sports right now.
It's called choice. I mean, that's the world we live in, though. It's choice.
It's choice, but I think if people are getting good advice when they're young, you realize you only get so many times to sort of make your reputation, right?
I know what you're saying, and I agree.
Build a reputation as a malcontent that didn't appreciate the fact you were in Nashville, where they have this great track record of developing goaltenders. Look, I hope it works out for the guy. I'm just saying there might have been a better way to approach this. Now he's going to be in San Jose, and maybe he's going to get maybe he's going to get 65 games. Who knows? But it's going to be tough to prove you're great in an environment like that, and we shall see how it goes.
But at least he'll know. He asked the question, he got the trade, and now he'll find out.
Well, and he won't be in Milwaukee, the Admirals of the AHL, and he won't be making an AHL salary, which is, I guess, really the point here.
Yeah, we've got some other stuff to do, but while we're waiting to dive into baseball, I can tell you that Keegan Matheson is here from MLB.com, Blue Jays reporter, and he's joining us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Keegan, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well, fellas. How you doing?
Good. So I guess we should just wrap up the Joey Votto stuff and get rid of it just because it's out there. In terms of atmosphere and vibe in that building, around the Jays, on the Votto departure, what can you tell us? What can you add to what's already been said?
That was a strange story all year. It had the potential to be one of the coolest stories of the entire season. I go back to early in March when Joey Votto joined the Blue Jays down in Dunedin. Probably the most interesting 20-minute media scrum I'll be in for years. Hearing Joey Votto, a guy who's 40 years old, a guy who's probably a Hall of Famer, talk about how he essentially wanted to try out for the local team. He wanted to try out for the Blue Jays. He wanted to be a minor league baseball player. And he did that. It just took some side roads. He had the ankle injury that took a long time away from him. I remember being in Clearwater, and he said that day, I think it was March 17th, because I've written it 1,000 times at this point, he rolled his ankle, and he said, "It hurt like the dickens, but I will be back tomorrow." It took a few months, and by the time Votto was healthy, the Blue Jays were not who any of us thought they would be. So I think going into the year, it was kind of, maybe by midsummer, Votto can come up and come off the bench. By midsummer, the season was over. So it didn't line up for anybody, but I think that it ended at least peacefully. Joey Votto, I really respect how he acknowledged that he would not have given people the show they wanted or deserved. And frankly, now, guys, when we look back on Joey Votto's career, when we have this Hall of Fame conversation year after year now, we'll look at his baseball reference page and his Fangraphs page, and it's going to say the word Cincinnati 17 times down the left side. There's not going to be Toronto Blue Jays 2 games played, 1 for 8 with 4 strikeouts. That wouldn't help anybody. Might have been a nice moment, but I think it ended as it should have.
And I don't want to belabor this, but you said peacefully, and I might. So I'm going to say really, because I just think that a guy who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, who had that great career with Cincinnati, who is a Toronto kid with friends and family that have supported him all this time, deserves some sort of, I guess maybe the word is acknowledgement, as opposed to the way it transpired. I'm not going to say handled, transpired. Am I right?
Yeah, the way that it all played out. I don't think anyone screwed this up. I think the situations just didn't line up. It's too bad. And a situation like last night, I almost wish that Votto was trying to come back with the Reds, with his team in their home park, where they could have done something last night. It's a bit awkward, given that, yes, he's a Canadian boy, lots of ties to Baseball Canada and baseball in Canada. But this is not his organization, not his stadium. So it was interesting to see him come down here afterwards. I think he raced right here from Buffalo and did some media, saw some old teammates with the Reds. Would have loved to see that story play out, because I care about a good story, and man, that would have been one. But I don't think anyone handled it wrongly. And from the very start, John Schneider said this, and I think behind the scenes it was pretty clear that this was up to Joey Votto. Like, he was the guy they were waiting on to say, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm ready, bring me up." Then they would have made the decision. I don't think it really got to that point, and the numbers certainly weren't at that point. So it ended how it had to, maybe is the better way to say it, even though it's not how a lot of folks wanted.
Well, hoping for a happy ending is a good segue, Keenan, because we want to talk about Bo Bichette and how you think maybe these, the remaining games, as irrelevant as they may be in the standings, could have some sort of relevance in terms of him reasserting himself as he returns from this calf injury. What's your best prognosis of what we might see from Bichette in the waning days of this season?
It can only be better. I mean, the rest of this season's been pretty ugly for him. A few calf injuries. His numbers, even when he's been healthy, and I don't know how healthy he's been, guys, but when he's been on the field, numbers haven't been good. I thought this was going to be a huge year for Bo. I was so off on that. I thought this was going to be his best year, a career year. Now he's got to come back and get some sort of momentum, and I do think that matters. If all goes well, looks like he'll get a few weeks down the stretch, at least enough, a good chunk of games. And whether Bo or the Blue Jays like it or not, we are going to spend all offseason talking about him. Whether we're talking about trades, extensions, the future, we're going to talk about Bo Bichette a ton. He's going to have a few weeks to shape how we talk about him. Is he the player that we're saying, God, the Blue Jays have got to build up one more year of Vladdy and Bo? Or are people going to be talking about, okay, this franchise needs to reset? Is this the one big opportunity to do so right now? It's going to be a big story. It's not going to go away. And these final few weeks, ideally for Bo, if he gets out there, that would be good for him. I think are going to shape how we have those conversations, because they're not going away.
Well, Keegan, it feels like it's one of those real dilemmas, because if this front office is indeed bent on selling the storyline that they are contenders in 2025, then it would follow that you need Bo Bichette to be, return to prime Bo Bichette form for that to happen. Obviously, there's also the storyline of his contractual situation and the idea that, he's heading into the final year, and how perilous that could be for a franchise that does not have him under control. And then there's the idea that if you were going to trade him, you'd be trading a guy at a down moment, at a low price, or a relatively lower price, given the struggles that he's had this year with some question marks around his health. I mean, how do you sort of juggle all those balls and come out on the right side of it?
I think it's important to look at how another team would view him. Now, here in Toronto, from me covering this team, certainly for fans. You think of Bo Bichette as the guy who came up with Vladdy, the top prospect, one of the best players on this team. The LA Dodgers don't care about that. They care about what he's going to do for them for 1 year, next year, and they need to be able to bet that he's going to bounce back and be an 800-plus OPS, decent defensive shortstop who can change the lineup. Or is this season the sign of something that could come? If I'm the LA Dodgers, if I'm the Padres, any other team that could trade for Bo Bichette, I'm looking at this year and saying, okay, I'm not giving you my top prospects. What if that calf injury comes back? It's already come back. From the other side of this, there's a lot of ways you can poke holes in that value. This would not be trading at peak value by any means. You can't always do that. You cannot always sell high. But this would be far from that. I think the Blue Jays, as they're constructed now, you're not going to make that magical trade that keeps this window open for 4 or 5 more years. You've either got to get really ugly for a couple of years or lean into it. And I don't think one Bo Bichette trade is going to fix everything for a few years. You might get a couple of prospects. You might get a couple guys from another organization who are not having a great run right now. But another team, as is always the case, will view your player much differently than fans in a market do. And I think outside of Toronto, that valuation could be a bit different.
Keegan, I know you're all over this story, but in terms of his season, if you push the injuries to the side, and that's a difficult thing to do, but I'm asking you to separate the injury and the rehab and how that affected his game. The rest of the healthy part of his season, how would you diagnose how this went south?
It's been very surprising. It has been the biggest surprise of this entire season for me. Bullpens fall apart. That happens. This lineup wasn't going to be much better than this because they didn't change much. That happens. Bo Bichette really surprised me this year. I thought that he, frankly, would be getting back-end MVP votes. I think he's that type of player when he's healthy. This has been the complete opposite of that. It started to pile up on Bo. The contact wasn't quite there, and he is a player who is extremely hard on himself. This is something that we see a little bit of, but something that John Schneider says a lot. He's been around this guy since he was 18 years old. And when you're struggling like that in the big leagues, it can be very difficult, especially when you're not used to that happening to you. A guy who's had a lot of success very early in his career. So there's a mental side to all of this as well. And I don't know how much that calf has bugged him all year. I don't know if he played a lot of these games at 90%, if he was at 70%. I feel like we're getting to the end of an NHL playoffs, guys, where we're going to find out that he had something much worse or that he was dealing with it all season long. I want to know what he was dealing with there, but he's never been himself this season. Bo Bichette as himself is an incredible baseball player and a guy that I would bet on any day of the week. I haven't really seen Bo Bichette this year.
Yeah, so Blue Jays at home tonight. Keegan to the Angels. It's Chris Bassett on the mound. And I guess the only question that's relevant is the dome open?
Hey guys, let's get a open dome here. Live roof report here. It is open. I think everyone is aware that it's open here at this point. It's looking good, but interesting times with those comments last week. I think everyone should know the air currents, the drag, the physics of the baseball tonight. But open roof and Angels versus Blue Jays. It's at least one of the top 15 games in baseball tonight, I tell you.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that sums it up nicely. What did you make of Ernie Clement's eye-level hit last night, the homer?
That's amazing. Guys, Ernie Clement is a ridiculous athlete. Like he's a guy who can go out to the golf course and shoot par, plays hockey, plays basketball, hand-eye coordination with Ernie Clement, and he's really impressed me this year. It's not stretching just for the sake of finding a silver lining, but I think he's a legitimate big leaguer, a guy that you're happy to have on your bench. I haven't seen anything like that one. I think since 2008, there's been one that was higher, and it was only an inch higher. So let's call this just about the highest home run that's been hit this last 20 years in baseball. Pretty amazing. Ernie's a guy that everyone in that clubhouse loves, a great athlete, and surprised a lot of people. 4 months ago, I was writing stories about will he make this roster, and now he's going to play 140 games. That says as much about the Blue Jays as Clement, of course, but credit to him, man. He's earned this.
Well, Keegan, you talk about, hitting a bad ball and taking it yard like Ernie Clement did. There was a time where, there were certain guys that prided themselves on being bad ball hitters. Obviously, probably the most famous of them being Vlad Guerrero Jr., the Hall of Famer, who was famous for golf. Speaking of golf, would take a pitch, a couple inches off the dirt and knock it a mile. I guess in the analytics era, now that we can quantify every pitch to the inch and we understand how bad some of these bad balls actually are, guys are not encouraged to swing as freely. But how would that Ernie Clement swing be viewed in the dugout or in maybe a meeting later when the analytics team says, hey, Ernie, you got to lay off those eye-level ones?
Yeah, there's probably 2 green stickers and then a little red one underneath it on their board out there. That's depends on the buzzword of the day. Impactful swings is a good one. Getting your A swing off. Damage is another buzzword this year. They tend to hold a meeting and pick 3 or 4 new buzzwords each season. But Ernie joked about that himself last night. He's a very intense guy on the field, but a very laid-back, lighthearted guy off of it. And one of the first things he says was, man, that was probably not a pitch I should be swinging at. And if he had have missed that pitch, he probably would have heard about it. So it's one of those things. It's only cool if it works.
Exactly. I got to tell you, he's got me with his first name. It's just great to hear Ernie again at the ball yard.
Not many Ernies anymore.
No.
I don't think there's any other Ernies around. So.
Spencer Horwitz has done a nice job. What's your read on what he can bring to the table?
Horwitz, a lot like Clement in this fact, very different hitters, but a lot like Clement in that I think you appreciate them more when you see them for 100 games. Neither are a guy who's going to come up in 5 games and wow you. They're not going to blow you away immediately, like a Vladdy, like an Aurelvis Martinez with incredible power or a game-stopping play. But when you see Spencer Horwitz over and over and over, I think you appreciate what his plate approach does to a game. He's got a little more power than he showed in the minor leagues. Maybe he's a guy who hits 18 or 20 in the big leagues. But he is another who's earning these shots and is putting the Blue Jays in some pretty interesting decisions for next year. Do you need to go out and upgrade some of these positions, or can a Horwitz, can a Jimenez, can a Barger be part of this solution? I really, really like Spencer Horwitz as a hitter. He's not going to be your traditional first baseman by any means, but him playing second base was a big surprise this year. I did not have that on any bingo card. I didn't think he was going to do that well. He has. He's done it at an MLB average level, which is more than enough. My goodness. And that changes who he is for this organization. And the guy gets on base. Get on base, good things will happen.
There's been a lot of talk, Keegan, about, how things could change for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if he could play a value position like third base on a daily basis. I think a lot of it, my view of that is a lot of that is contractually driven, right? Like you would be more valuable if you can prove you can be an everyday third baseman. How do you see that? Do you think that's a productive conversation for the Blue Jays to be having, or is that more about individual financial gain rather than, team advantage?
That's got to be part of it. Absolutely has to be part of it. Now, from the team side, sure, if you find a great first baseman and you can stick Vladdy at third and eat some errors over the course of the season, the Blue Jays need to find offense somehow. If that's the way they've got to do it, yeah, maybe that's on the table. But if I'm Vladdy and I have the option to enter free agency, even as an okay third baseman, a passable third baseman with all that power, that's a lot more attractive than entering free agency as a first baseman, period.
Right.
That's going to not only going to open up more money, but open up more teams, I think, very importantly. That might open up another 2, 3, 4, 5 teams with that flexibility, that versatility. Now, Vladdy, I would need to see a long stretch of him to prove that he is a different defender now. He's got the feet, he's got the hands. It's about more than that. I like where they're at now with him positionally. Play first base most of the time, but let's say 20 times a year when you need to get one more bat into the lineup, then go over to third. Take a risk. If you screw up, whatever. You're taking a shot at some offense that they need. But full-time would be an adventure, I believe, an adventure that could benefit Vladdy. I don't know as much about the Blue Jays, but an adventure.
Keegan, don't mean to put you on the spot, but of course I will. 5 weeks left in the regular season for the Jays. Yeah. In their season, what is a good story for them? What is a good way to end this, and what is an unacceptable ending for them?
They need to see pieces that can matter next season. I don't think wins and losses matter a ton at this point. They need to finish healthy, Chris Bassett, Jose Barrios, Kevin Gausman, those guys have got to finish the season healthy. They're going to keep pitching innings. They need them. But the Blue Jays need someone to be more than just a depth piece next year. You can find bench guys. Any good front office should be able to. But the Blue Jays need Bowden Francis, Yariel Rodriguez, someone like a Jimenez, Horwitz, Clement, etc., to actually step up and look like they're going to be something next year. Because not only does that help your ball club, that helps your money in the offseason. If you can say, okay, second base is handled, let's take that $10 million and get a really good left fielder next year. Joey Loperfido is another name I should be mentioning there. They've got to see someone really pop. Having a good season, sure, you need stars. The Blue Jays need stars, above average MLB players. Injuries is just what they need to avoid. They're veterans playing down the stretch in games that don't mean all that much. I understand and respect these guys want to, and there's a lot of fans in the stadium tonight who are paying a ton of money to see them play. You got to respect that as well. But they need to finish healthy because this rotation for years now cannot handle an injury. They've been saved by Ross Stripling, by Ryu coming back, this year by Bowden Francis. This rotation cannot handle injuries, and they've got to finish healthy.
Looking beyond the Jays, Keegan, continues to amaze me what Aaron Judge is up to.
Yeah.
48 homers, another one last night, on pace for 60+. When you see those numbers, like what pops to mind for you? Like what impresses you the most about what Judge has been able to do?
That he's doing it in this era of pitching. To do this against pitchers who throw like this is ridiculous. And even when you see a player like Vladdy, I'll use Vladdy as an example, he has similar enough power. He can hit the ball just about as hard. But the numbers that Judge puts up in a home run total, while being the number one guy that pitchers want to avoid. If I'm a pitcher facing the Yankees, my number one goal is not to win the game. It's just not to get embarrassed. I don't want to be on SportsCenter that night because you've got a good chance of leading off SportsCenter if you are that pitcher. The fact you can do this over and over again, especially the one wrinkle that's a little more inside baseball is how tall he is. A tall hitter like that, you can really pick apart. That's a big, long swing. There's a lot of space for a pitcher to beat you in there, and he still gets it. Incredibly gifted athlete. One of the only baseball players who has ever made me feel small. I feel like I'm looking up and shaking the hand of a giant. Just a tremendous athlete, great ambassador for the game, a dream Yankee for that organization. And man, it's hard to sign a contract that big and make it immediately look like you're almost being underpaid. It's amazing.
Keegan, nice job on weaving SportsCenter in there. I mean, that's the bosses are going to love that. Hey. Can you give us a roof update before we say goodbye? Is it still open?
We're still open for now. If this starts to close, everything goes to crap. I won't know what to do.
What will Chris Bassett do is the more important thing. Will he start shrieking and yelling for them to stop or what?
Good question. His move is more of the neck roll with a bit of a sigh. He's more subtle.
Okay.
A little more subtle.
And aside from the SportsCenter weave into your conversation, the fact that you said it's open for now, that's a seasoned reporter.
That's right. This roof, too, guys, I tell you, the more I travel, the more I love this thing. It may be ugly, but it's the most beautiful thing in Toronto to me.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Keegan, thanks very much.
You got it, guys. Take care.
All right, Keegan Matheson, appeared on Maple Toyota's hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Keegan Matheson.
Yeah. You called him Matthews. I called him Keenan at one point. Nearly called him Keanu because we were talking about Keanu Reeves. So we had a few name problems, but I think we mostly got it right.
Well, it's Mail It In Friday.
That's right.
So what were you expecting? Hey. Excellence? I mean, come on.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll continue on with Yes Guy, No Guy. Speaking of inexcellence, that is next on Overdrive, TSN 4, TSN 1050, the iHeartRadio app, and streaming online. Oh, Yes Guy, nice scratchy guitar. I love that. Welcome to Overdrive, Mail It In Friday. Jim Tatti and Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star. And Mr. Cologne is with us. It's time now for
Yes Guy, No Guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for Yes Guy, No Guy on Overdrive and Melon Friday. Doogie, how are you today, sir?
Doing well. You guys? How we feeling?
Great.
On a Friday.
Couldn't
Feeling
be better.
good?
How many eau de toilettes today?
Well, that's been the question all week. And today it's 1.
Okay.
1.
It started from 3 to
Just a bit,
2.
just a bit. Yeah, it's 1.
1?
It's 1.
I was going to ask you, how do I smell?
Yeah. No, you can't. Not a good question.
That's
guy.
not a good
Please
question.
don't make me laugh.
No, I won't.
My back's going to go nuts. Please don't.
Hopefully that's feeling okay.
Please don't do that. Okay. Yeah, it's not a good question, guy. You want to rephrase.
Very true. Very true. But speaking of good questions, I have a really, really good question for you guys to start off. Yes, Guy, No Guy
The
today.
listeners and viewers will tell you.
They'll tell us.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I believe it is.
Okay. I like that. You qualified.
Well, what a night at BMO last night. The C&E game, a lot of Rough Riders fans in town. Like, that was awesome to see the sea of green travel over to Toronto.
Yeah. And by the way, Dutchie honored before the game, and Danny
Incredible
Webb,
moment.
the equipment manager, honored at halftime. 40 years. Congrats.
Oh, that's nice.
Incredible moment.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing time in there.
Yep.
And the game ended in dramatic fashion, would you say?
Anticlimactic?
It ended in a fashion. We're seeing it up here on
It's
TSN
wide and
4.
they win.
A missed field goal to win a game. This has received buzz across the world because not many fans understand the rule of the CFL. It's a rouge.
Yeah.
That's 1 point.
Yeah.
You're going to win the game. So you miss the field goal, you win the game, and there it happens. The Argonauts are winners. So yes, guy, no guy. The CFL should reconsider the rouge rule in game-winning situations.
Oh, I'm going to go yes guy on that. And then as I say that, I mean, I don't want to be accused of a double standard. I mean, obviously, an NHL game can be won in a shootout. How exciting. And penalty kicks in soccer. I always look for something that sort of represents the game.
Yeah.
Missed field goal doesn't represent the game that we saw last night. So I'm going to say in a game-winning situation, the single point, ixnayed, gone.
Yeah, I'm going no guy. I don't think you need to tinker with this.
No?
I mean, this is like a old school rule, right? Like,
Oh, yes.
it goes back, it harkens back to the early days of football when the kicking was more important. And
I like harkens back. That's good. I like that.
Thank you. And I like that. I like the quirkiness. You know, you have to differentiate yourself in this world, and the CFL does that on a number of levels, including the quirk of the rouge. And heck, if you're a Bills fan, you wish that wide right was worth a single point.
Oh, yes, you do.
Because then they would have gone to overtime.
Oh, yes, you do.
And maybe Buffalo Bills history would have been different if there was indeed a rouge in the NFL.
Although it kind of works, the Buffalo Bills history, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Kind of works.
Hey,
It's pain. It's pain.
Why you hating on Bills? Mafia?
No, it's just it kind of works the way it is.
Carlo down here and
Yeah.
fix
That's a
you
shot.
up.
That's a shot.
Kind of works the way it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just
Said
saying.
the
I
Lions
mean,
fan.
there's downsides to it, obviously, and it is a little anticlimactic. But so are the shootout. So can be penalty kicks. I mean, the game. Like, let's get this game over with. They got it over with.
Those are all in each one of those scenarios, including the Rouge. Great for the winning team, not so great for the losing team.
And I will say no guy to this in 2 standards. So in one situation, you can think of it as a regular season game. I don't mind it in a regular season CFL game. But if this were to happen in the East Final,
Oh, the Grey Cup.
in the Grey Cup, then I believe they would have to reconsider a rule change in that situation. Like, imagine
That's
winning the Grey Cup
part of the
on
game, though.
a missed field goal.
But it
It's
happens.
historic.
It does happen.
It could happen.
It's not the first time it's happened.
It's like people that say, "Well, you can't have a pitch clock because what if you lost? What if you lost the World Series on a pitch clock violation?"
Which could happen.
Guess what? Don't have a pitch clock violation.
Yeah.
Don't give up a rouge. Okay. You gave up the rouge. You allowed them to get down the field to get to the position where the kicker could kick it through the end zone.
Absolutely.
You gave it up.
And not that many people were crying about the ill-timed timeout that created the situation.
There's that too. That complicates the situation.
Yeah.
And there you go. It's not on.
Yeah.
It's not on the rule.
No.
It's on the team.
Well, coach called a timeout
Right.
when they were in the midst of getting the first down.
That was
Don't
a
blame
grind
the
game.
rule.
Yeah, well, that's true.
That was a grind game. We know what that game was. Chad Kelly making his return. Even he said it after the game, a win is a win. Like,
Yeah.
you have to admit that.
Well, it is.
And a couple of the interviews, Matthew Shinetti was interviewing DeMonte Coxie after the game, and even he said, I didn't really see our best game. So the Argonauts
no.
will have to improve and just make some chemistry,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And a team not far from here in Toronto is the Montreal Alouettes. What a season they've had so far.
9-1.
9 wins. They're undefeated on the road and undefeated against West Division teams. So yes guy, no guy. The Alouettes are the best team in CFL history.
Oh, no guy. No. You can't anoint the best team in CFL history before Labor Day. No guy.
Not at all?
No, you can't go there.
Well, look, I mean, they've been very impressive.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to lambaste the Argos the way they did in the East Final, to win the Grey Cup, and then to come out of the gates this season, 10 games in at 9-1. Very impressive, as you point out, Josh. I mean, to go 5-0 on the road, very difficult to do. But it's let's pump the brakes on history. I mean, we were like, and heck, we get accused of these things of being premature, of having recency bias. I know there's such a rich history to this league. You got to go back a long time. There's been a lot of great teams. There's been a lot of great players
in Montreal.
Yeah.
And
it was just last season that we were saying, hey, maybe the Argos are the best team in CFL history.
It's true.
And then they face planted at the biggest moment of their season. And we said, yeah, maybe they're not the best team in CFL history, because you got to come through when it matters. And this Alouettes team is going to have to come through when it matters to get into that conversation.
Yeah, and we're in week 12, and if Hamilton loses tonight, which a lot of the favors go towards the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 10.5 point favorites on the FanDuel Sportsbook app.
Yeah.
And if the Alouettes win on Sunday, it's an East Division playoff berth already in week 12.
Really?
Wow.
Very impressive. And Koji Fajardo also back in this game.
Edmonton's.
So it just keeps getting better for the Montreal Alouettes. And we've alluded to this name throughout the show. It's Nick Robertson. And we know the stance that he has with the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know how he's talked about reconsidering his future within this franchise, and the AHL might not cut it in his career anymore. So, yes guy, no guy, the Maple Leafs should give Nick Robertson one more shot with the Leafs in the NHL.
Gee, you really boxed me in with the wording. I'm gonna say no guy. Just because I don't really think they're in a position to give anybody a shot. I think they have to march forward, and if you're in, you're in, and if you're not, you're out. I just don't. I don't. Yeah, it's not time to develop players for the Leafs. It's time to win. So I'm going to say, based on that, nothing against Nick, who would go on to a bigger and better things elsewhere. No guy.
I'm a yes guy. I think they can find a way to make this work. Partly because it's in their interest to, right? Like, I will say this about Nick Robertson: when he's been given the opportunity, he does one thing very, very well, and that is put the puck in the net.
Absolutely.
14 goals last year in 56 games. When you looked at it on a per-minute basis, outside of the elite guys that are making the double-digit $1 million contracts, he was their most dependable goal scorer. So that's hard to find. And I know there's warts on the other side of his game, and I know, obviously, the team cannot be happy that he's publicly aired his grievances with the team and ask for a trade. But, man, you hate to see that kind of talent when it comes to the most difficult skill to find in the game leave the room.
I agree with you. It's just that they have skill.
They do. And recently just signed Alex Steves. That's another indication that they're bringing back a foundation here of their prospect system. And we've all watched this team on a day-to-day basis. Tatti covering the team, Dave covering the team. And you know where Robertson's at in his career. So who would he push off? That's the real question. Ryan Reeves on the fourth line, Connor Dewar on the fourth line, Bobby McMahon, and a lot of projections is on the second line this season. So a lot of fans are confused and puzzled of this situation.
They have that great core of skill.
Yeah,
and it's hard to draft around that.
It's true,
because then you need obviously character players and guys that are suited for lower parts of the roster. That's not everybody. I mean, if you have to pick who you pick because you always draft the best player available, but that doesn't mean that there's a freeway onto the NHL roster.
And the scariest part for a lot of Leaf fans is saying, well, if Nick Robertson is let go here, will this turn into a situation like Zach Hyman, like Nazem Kadri?
Well, I mean, you always expect that the guy's going to go on to bigger and better things. That's why you get the right return.
You think so?
You can't say, well, he's not. He's an NHL player.
Yes.
I mean, it's about the fit. It's not about his ability. It's about the fit.
And look, I mean, it's always tough to look at the depth chart in the middle of August and get a real read on it, because you know what happens. Injuries start to happen.
Sure.
Seasons unfold the way they unfold, and opportunities arise. It is obviously a position that they have in surplus. There's no question about that. But to your point, I'm not just giving this guy away.
Oh no. You got to manage that asset properly.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, 2 or 3 trades later, you're in a big problem.
Yeah, and so I'm not in favor of just like, let's just usher him out the door here.
No. Yeah.
And I'm not sure, given the weakness of the Leafs' leverage right now, I'm not sure what they're going to be able to get back for him.
That's the real case. You either sign the contract, you play it one more year, or letting him walk. It'll be a tough decision in both.
It's a tough one, and you can
Both
see
ways.
why it's lingering, because
It's going to linger up till camp.
when you've got time, you take it, and
Yeah.
maybe something happens that'll change the view of the situation.
Yeah, well, we saw some circulating photos on X today of some Maple Leafs up in Muskoka. Up in Bracebridge on the ice. We saw Austin Matthews. There he is. There's the cap. John Tavares was there. Easton Cowan. Fraser Minton was there. And a question I'm going to pose to both of you. Yes guy, no guy. Easton Cowan and Fraser Minton will make the Leafs roster after training camp this year.
So that means
They make the
they
team.
can be there for a couple of games and then out.
That's correct.
I'm just going to play the odds and percentages. I got to believe somebody sticks around, one of the two. So yes guy, one of the two.
Oh, I'm a big yes guy on this. This seems like it. Well, they did it with Minton last year. I think they do it with Cowan this year. I mean, it's a free look. You
got 9 games.
You give the guy that NHL experience for, whatever you say. You got up to 9. You can give him 3. You can give him 6. You can give him 9. Whatever you want to give him that makes sense for you as a team. And I think it's a natural progression, right? Like, you had a great year in junior. If he comes into camp with the kind of fire and hunger you hope he has and impresses you, I think you reward him with a little bit of a taste.
Hey, this guy could be a major story at the World Juniors this year.
Sure, he could.
Yeah.
He really could.
I mean, he's become a dominant junior.
Absolutely.
To see one of them on the roster next season would be a very valuable decision by the Maple Leafs. I think that's what they wanted to go to. And Tatti, you've talked about the win now with this team.
Yeah.
I think one of those guys, if you put them in a situation, you can definitely win with them. So we'll see what happens.
That doesn't leave much room for Nick, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. That's a
Yeah,
competition.
it's crowded on the bus. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Well, a team that didn't win, and it was unfortunate at the Olympics, was the Canada men's basketball team.
Yeah.
And we know the storyline of what happened. And a player at the forefront that we've talked about a ton, and the media and fans have been buzzing about, was Jamal Murray. And the Denver Nuggets president spoke in a press conference today and mentioned that Jamal Murray was not 100% during the Olympics this year. So yes guy, no guy. If Jamal Murray was healthy, let's rewind a little bit. If Jamal Murray was healthy,
was 100%,
Canada would have won a medal at the Olympics. So if he was on his A game, not averaging only 6 points per game and shooting 29% from the field.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because the game they lost against France was to get into a medal game.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm going to say no guy. I just think that there was some things there, and obviously if he's healthy, that's a different story. They seem to wear out, and maybe that was because he wasn't healthy. A lot of the things that they depended on, they seem to rally all the time. I'm just going to say no guy. I hate to say that because I really liked that team. It was disappointing the way it ended, but I'm going to say no guy.
Yeah, I'm a no guy. I mean, look, we'd all like to believe that.
Yeah,
everybody,
you want it to happen.
Everybody wanted to believe Canada had the best backcourt on the planet with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a healthy Jamal Murray, and we just didn't see anything close to a 100% Jamal Murray. That's not breaking news. It was just, you could see it with the eye test. You could see it. Obviously, the fact that he was coming off the bench was a good hint that he wasn't quite ready to be the guy everybody hoped he could be. But there was more than that missing, I think, on this team.
Yeah.
There was real credible size missing from that team. There was a shortage of shooting in big moments on that team. We saw how important that was when Steph Curry put on that clinic that put the U.S. over the top in the gold medal game. You need dead-eye, fearless three-point shooting to win FIBA games at the Olympic level. And Canada, I don't think, has enough of that, although Murray could have provided it If he would have been healthy, he just wasn't that guy. I still think it's too much of a hypothetical for me to believe that him being a little more healthy changes things.
It was unfortunate the way it ended because who knows what would happen in a game, especially against the U.S. They were heavy favorites on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, and a lot of players and a lot of teams knew that this was the team to beat, and they did it. It wasn't like a path like easily for them.
No,
it took some time. It took Steph Curry, it took LeBron James to really pick up the pace.
Without a doubt.
No.
I mean, the margins are slim in these 40-minute games. You see it in FIBA all the time. Like the games are so short. The three-point line is a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
The threes are a little more important.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different sport,
Huge.
FIBA basketball than the NBA basketball. And Canada, let's face it, Canada's got some work to do in getting better at playing that particular brand of the sport.
I do have to say, Jordi Fernandez, the team that Roland Barrett has built up, there's a lot of promise when it comes to the next Olympics.
Right. But unfortunately, next Olympics aren't for another 4 years.
That's the problem.
And the promise sits and waits, as it has been for quite a while.
That's the problem. Let's do a quick yes guy, no guy to wrap it up. The BMW Championship FedEx Cup playoffs are underway. Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith within the top 10. Pretty impressive tournament for them. And what a year it's been for the Canadians. And we got the President's Cup coming up in about a month or so from now. So yes guy, no guy, at least 3 Canadians will make the International President's Cup team.
I'm going to say yes, guy, with Mike Weir doing the selecting, and it's in Canada. If it doesn't happen now, it'll never happen. So I'm going to say yes, guy, an emphatic yes, guy.
Yeah, I think a yes guy is appropriate here. I mean, I think Weir would like it. I was just talking about it. Like, it would be much easier for Weir if one of these guys could sneak into the top 6, so he doesn't have to be 3 of his 6 captains' picks are Canadians. Yeah. Looks a little obvious. Looks a little homerish. Because, there's a lot of countries here. You got the South Koreans are there, the Japanese, the South Africans, the Australians. I mean, it's a vast network, right?
It's heavy.
And you have to kind of play the political game with all of them. And it can't just be, this is in Canada, therefore Canada gets what they want. It's not really how it works, even though I think Mike Weir would wish it would work that way.
Yeah.
But three seems like the number. I think with Pendrith and Connors, doing the math on the rankings is tough, but with Pendrith and Connors playing well this week, I think it's more plausible that happens.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a great thing.
And I remember when we were at the RBC Canadian Open, a lot of buzz, and we had the opportunity to speak to Mackenzie Hughes, and he was talking about it, saying, could he be in a situation? Adam Hadwin obviously wants to be in a situation. Corey Connors was on the show before he went to the Olympics and says that's his priority. Like, we know the Olympic gold was one thing, but to make the President's Cup on home soil, this is massive.
Big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's massive. And right now, like, Connors is in 7th in the standings. Taylor's 11th.
There you go.
Hadwin is 12th. Pendrith is 13th. So all of them have a legitimate claim to being in the top 12.
Yeah.
And if Pendrith has a great week this week, maybe he pops up there ahead of those guys. But which 3 is the question, right? Connors seems like a given. Taylor's been slumping of late, even though he's the highest guy in the world rankings for Canada. It's not an easy decision for Mike Weir.
No, it's not.
Is that it?
That's it.
We're yes guy, no guide out?
We're timed out.
Apparently.
I would love to keep going, though.
I mean,
yeah. You can't beat a 45-minute confirm or deny, but this could do it.
I mean, that's the mark. We have
could
to go.
you?
Or could you?
We may be able to do that if something doesn't go right in the next hour.
We can do one more on the other side if you want. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. And Overdrive continues on TSN 4, TSN 1050, the iHeartRadio app, and streaming online. Overdrive on a Friday, Mail It In Friday. Jim, Tatti, Dave Feschuk with you. Doogie's in studio. We're going to play supplemental Yes Guy, No Guy. But Mail It In Fridays is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP is serving fish bowls and ice cold pints in the patio all summer long. So grab your sunscreen. Let's have ourselves a weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling you. King's Plate just finished. Caitlin Her Greatness wins a 9-1 shot and wore down the favored My Boy Prince in the stretch.
A horse named after the great Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
A filly wins the King's
That's right.
Plate.
The lone filly in the race.
Wow. Beats My Boy Prince. Wow. Shocker. Everything's going Caitlin Clark's way these days.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay.
Best player.
Got a minute. Let's go.
Let's go to this quickly. We saw Rory McIlroy throw his 3-wood at Castle Pines today. He's upset. Really upset with this game ever since the U.S. Open. What a disaster.
On a skip, too.
So yes guy, no guy very quick here. Rory McIlroy will win at least one more major in his career.
Oh, that's a slam dunk yes guy. Yeah, he's got it in him. I mean, it hasn't happened for a while, like 10 years, but he's going to do it.
I'm a no guy.
Oh, wow.
I believe the ship has sailed with that 3-wood out to sea.
Yeah.
Never to be seen
He
again.
didn't want to hit the car. There was a car parked right beside him.
Yeah.
I don't see it, man. I just think there's too much scar tissue, too much water under the bridge, too many chances. And it's just like, I was at the Masters this year, and Tom Watson was talking about it. He didn't get the career slam. And he said, look, I had a chance once, and it slipped away, and I never had another one. Like, careers just go, man. And his seems to be heading the wrong direction.
We're moving to TSN2. Join us there.